So you all know me anyway. I'm Mike from Two Shakes, and well, I just want to say thank you for first of all for joining us today. What I want to do is kind of go through. We've got an hour. I wanted to go through your profile setup, make sure everybody knows a lot of the things that have happened and things that we've added along the lines. If you're not new to Two Shakes, there might be a few things in there to learn. Then we're going to go through a simple setup where we sign up a company and 2 directors. We're going to need to consider AML, and I'll show you all of the AML stuff. So we'll assume that there's AML services involved, and one of them will be with us. So we're going to do them sign here and now via SMS, and we might even do a manual IDV because we're there and then, and I can sort of cite their ID and make a note of it. They might have some address details with them. The other person, we're going to do an electronic IDV. Because they're going to be signing remotely. So that's kind of what we're going to do. And then we'll have a whole bunch of questions at the end. If you need to ask a question that's burning during it, just feel free, unmute, ask me a question, no problem. Just be aware that my train of thought can get derailed. So don't worry too much. Sweet. So yeah, and I'm going to record this as well so that everybody knows. I will record it, and then we'll be able to sort of put this up and make sure that other people get the benefit of it as well. So that's awesome. Right, let's get stuck into it. Again, Mike from Two Shakes, and I'm just going to share my screen, and everybody in a second should see my desktop. I don't have to worry about Zoom, but I'm going to go to Two Shakes training. Now, Two Shakes training environment, as you may or may not know, is a completely separate environment to live. The training environment allows you to do all sorts of really cool stuff and get used to the product and see what it's like from your clients as well as your point of view. Get used to doing the signings, get used to doing the IDVs, but nothing goes outside of it. So it's a nice kind of sandbox environment. It has this peachy pink background. So when you see that peachy pink background, you know that you're in training. And for those of us with iPhones, it's rose gold. Okay, so that's that. If you go to the Two Shakes website at any point, and you can have a look in here, if you are concerned about AML as it says here, and you see more info and click on it, you can do 2 things. You can actually sign up for the free training environment there, and you can sign up for the 10 free in the live environment. So both of those boxes get you signed up. I know most of you today will have an account, but it's just worth knowing. So let's just kind of log in and get started. We'll go into the business profile. The first time you come into Two Shakes, you set up your business profile, and you can search for your company here, puts the first few bits in it. You know, say I'm working for Atta's New Books today, so Atta's got me working gainfully for her. But you put in your details there, search for it, it'll pull all of the information through. If you're a sole trader or if you don't have an NZBN yet, you can just put in information manually. But that's just about making Two Shakes look like your business. So we do your business, we get your branding. Now we've made a little bit of changes to this. You can put in your logo, obviously. You can put in an email footer in there so that any emails that go out from Two Shakes can have your email footer. Put in your social media handles. Now, there are 2 main types of email that go out from Two Shakes. One is when we're asking a client to remotely sign, and the other is the congratulations when they've signed. So what we added recently was the ability to go in here and edit the email that they're going to get that says, please sign this, so that you can tweak it the way you like. It's a little read-only bit in the middle here that we can't get you to change. We just need to be able to say that to people. So have a look in there. You might want to configure the normal wording to be more like how you portray your practice. In the end, you get this thank you for signing up with my practice email. And that's what goes to your client along with the services agreement. You can also attach things about your practice to this email, such as a bio, a PDF that shows how to get the best out of your practice, or even further information that you need them to potentially sign. So that's all in your branding, which is nice and simple. Then you've got your services and your fees. Now, the services and fees, you can just leave it a simple description and remove all of the canned services. You can change these, add any that you like, and any services you have in here will show up when you're signing up with a little tick box that's already checked. So any services, just make that reflect your practice. And the fees, it's just a text box. You can put in anything you like here, whether you charge monthly, whether you charge hourly, whether you have different prices for different packages. If you've got 3 or 4 different ways of charging, just put them all in here. And when you're signing somebody up, delete the ones that don't apply and leave the one that does. So it's nice and simple. And if you don't do something with fees, you can just put that in here, a little bit of text saying we don't charge because we're doing it pro bono. Then we're into the authorities. Now, there's a lot of complexity in here, but this is something that can give you so much good value out of Two Shakes. This is where we can get authority with 3 government agencies, Inland Revenue, ACC, and Companies Office. We can also get signed letters of authority that we can send to other private organizations like insurance companies, banks, and the like. You can upload and sign a single-page PDF to create authorities that your client signs, like a to whom it may concern or a personal guarantee. And you can put a little bit of text in about a general authority. This is also where you would configure Zero Practice Manager or Workflow Max so that we can write to that instance at the end of the sign up. And we also recently integrated with a CRM package called Base. And this is where you put in your Base access token that allows you to launch Two Shakes from within a deal in Base once the person wants to sign up, which is nice and cool. Bit of a new feature that we put in there recently. So in the IRD bit, and I know this is probably the most relevant to everybody, there's a couple of bits to it. One, obviously this is your business, your one company IR number. Now, if you're a tax agent and you're always a tax agent, you're just going to ask for consent to link in My IR. We don't do the linking in My IR because IR haven't yet built it. They've promised it as part of business transformation. So when that comes, we will be able to link in My IR as well. For now, if you're a tax agent, you would normally be getting somebody to sign a piece of paper to allow you to link an IRD audit you on that. That's this here. If I was a tax agent, for all my clients, I'd just leave it like that. If I'm not a tax agent, I can just see an IR 597. That's a nominated party form. We automatically send that through to Inland Revenue. It gives you authority to represent your customer by phoning Inland Revenue. Ticking this email allows the Inland Revenue to send you an email confirming it's been done. Otherwise, they would have to send you a letter. If you're a tax agent, but not always for your clients, have them both and decide at the time that you're signing up. And that's the simplest way of thinking about it. ACC, with ACC authority, we integrate with them and we send them an ACC 1766, which is a bit like a nominated party form. It allows you to contact ACC on behalf of your client. It used to be that ACC had an approved agents list where certain organizations like chartered accountants and lawyers and the like could just contact them and say, I'm a chartered accountant, here's my number, I'd like you to access this client's record. That's gone. So everybody now needs to have an ACC 1766 or link to them in My ACC. Company's Office, when you're signing up a company, if you complete these 3 steps, we integrate with Company's Office and we post straight into their queue the request for you to have authority over that limited company, and that allows you to do like company's annual returns. When you're doing that, you need an organizational account at Company's Office. We've got a lot of stuff on the website explaining that, but it's fantastic. Once you go through that process, when you're signing somebody up, you just leave the box ticked, and the next time you log into Company's Office, you'll see that you can manage that company. A signed letter of authority is really useful, as I mentioned. You can upload and sign some general authority stuff. With Practice Manager, you just have a kind of get authorized. It takes you through to Zero website. You put in your username and password, tell them you're okay for Two Shakes to write to your instance, and you're good to go. So that's everything on authorities. I kind of thought I'd spend a little bit of time there because there's a few bits of complexity. Terms and conditions, just if you've got your terms and conditions of business, just copy and paste them over the top of these ones. These were the Bookkeepers Association kind of standard terms that the bookkeepers allowed us to put in. And if you've got alternate terms, some people run 2 different businesses with very different sets of terms and conditions from the same limited company. So you can just choose alternate terms if you need them. Very few people do, but it's in there just in case. Then you can add additional users. Now, The first user is always going to be an AML officer and the admin. If you add another user, you can say whether or not they're an admin. If you do, then they can see this profile and they can edit it. If you don't, they don't see business profile. If you say that they're an AML officer, they get to see an extra button on the customer due diligence that allows them to click to say, my CDD is complete for this customer. I can now provide AML in scope service. So that's what that is. Come in. Right. So that's all the profile that you need to worry about. And many of you already have that. So let's just go and sign up a client. Now, today we're going to sign up a company called Distinct Landscapes. Now, Distinct Landscapes, imagine they've got two directors, and Deborah and Stuart, and Deborah has come into the office, wants to sign up here and now, but she wants to sign up as a client as well, and so does her other director, Stuart. They both need their end of year tax returns done. Now, this is a real company, but it's obviously, this is a complete kind of fictitious example. I'm not actually signing anyone up. So I just put in the most of that, and then we'll just search. This is where we see, there's Distinct Landscapes Limited. That's the NZBN number. I can see it's a registered New Zealand limited company, which is fantastic. So the first thing we ask you to do is to choose a main signatory for the agreement. The reason for that is the main signatory will sign on behalf of all organizations as well as themselves if they're signing up. If you have a look at government forms, they always just have a single person who signs the government forms for companies. So we ask you to identify that person just now. In this case, I'm dealing with Deborah. She's come in to speak to me. So I'll say Deborah is my main signatory. If the CEO or a non-director was come in, I could just put somebody else in there. So now we say, are any of the individuals here, the two directors, Deborah and Stuart, are they going to be signing up as individual clients? The reason we need that is because when we submit things like an IR 597 or an ACC 1766, we need to send a separate one for the company and for any individuals so that you can represent them and we can capture their IR numbers as well. So we're going to have them both. We're doing both of their end of year tax returns. I'm signing up now. Organizations is Distinct Landscapes and my two individuals, Deborah and Stuart. If Deborah, as the main signatory, was associated with some other companies that she wanted to sign up at the same time because she's entrepreneurial, we can just keep searching for them and adding them in here and building out this list. But we'll say for now, this is us done, one company and both directors. So when I say done, it takes me back to the first page, but it actually just opens it up and I can see what I'm doing. I'm signing up individuals is Deborah and Stuart. Deborah is the main signatory and she's signing on behalf of organizations and signing up as an individual client. If she wasn't, that other box there would be ticked. Stuart's just signing up as a client, and we've got Distinct Landscapes. I could add other individuals who weren't on the Companies Office register through NZBN. I could add other organizations like trusts and the like here and add them manually if that's what I was wanting to do just now. So you can just keep building up additional bits to that list after you've done your bit in the Companies Office. From the NZBN, we pull through the addresses and we'll say, yep, I'm quite happy with that address. And I don't need to worry about the website and email. So let's just proceed. And we're going to go through to services and fees. Now, we're always going to show you this is who's signing up so you know where you're at. These are the services and fees that we've pulled through from the profile. And if we're not doing some particular things for this client, we can change it. If we are doing the sort of changing the fees, we could change it there. We have, this is really... Yep. We have, was that a cockerel? Yeah, so we have this extra bit here now called Westpac Bank Referral. If you're signing up a client and they've got a new business or, and they need banking services, or if they're running their business out of their personal bank account and they're interested in talking to Westpac Bank, then you can put it in here. Westpac Business On Demand team will get an email and contact your client and know that that client has come from you. Just so you know, it's great if you want to do this. It's nice to ask people. Westpac Innovation Fund, along with Data Futures Partnership and Callahan Innovation, funded Two Shakes extensions for AML. It was a very expensive project. They funded it, and because of that funding, this is a bit of a thank you to them, to Westpac. And what we've managed to do is keep the pricing at $30, including AML, at a level that will get the most amount of people being able to use it, and that was really important to us. So this is a little bit of a thank you, and it's really useful for yourself, obviously, just to be able to help any new customers with businesses or people who are doing their business banking out of their personal account, which you don't want. Right, so feel free to do that. It's up to you. Terms and conditions, this pulls through from what we saw, and obviously you can see that if you just select your alternate terms, they'll pull through there. At any time, you can make notes in files. If you just need to make a note about your customer, that might be things like their accounting periods or accounting type, anything that you like, you can just make some notes and upload files. Then we just go through to the authorities. Again, anything that you've configured in the profile, this is what you see while you're signing up. So in this case, if I was a tax agent and I didn't want to, I want to be the tax agent for this client, I might just say, yep, I'm fine. My Inland Revenue Authority is like that. If I was not a tax agent for this client, I would send in a 597. Company's office, if I had it configured properly just now in training, this would be just show the limited company with a tick. ACC is nice and simple, it's ticked. So I'm going to get ACC authority for the company and both clients. I can create a signed letter of authority to another organization for any of the entities that I'm signing up. So say Deborah said to me, actually, I've got a real problem with state insurance with a particular policy and I can never get it sorted out, and it would be great if you could do it. I'll select Deborah, add a letter of authority and say state insurance and any policy, optionally put in Deborah's date of birth, and I will get a signed letter from Deborah giving me authority to ask for her information at state insurance as part of the sign-up. Then we've got the general authority. I'll just leave that in there. I can show you at the end. If I forget, just remind me. So we'll leave that now. In the general authority statement that's going to appear, and this is completely configurable. Then we go through to the big AML extension. Now, what we're saying is, will these services meet customer due diligence requirements for AML CFT? We have a really useful little bit of help that explains some of that stuff and some links to the DIA website. So it's really handy to think about the types of services that by now, if you're going to be a reporting entity, you're going to work out, I need a program, I need to train my staff, to vet my staff, I need to understand this, do my risk assessment, and I know what services are going to trigger AML. So at this point, you would say, yep, I know the services that I'm providing this client are going to trigger AML. If they didn't, you could, if you could just hit proceed and go through to signing as normal. But we will, otherwise it would be a not so good demonstration of the AML side. We will say that the services we're providing are in scope for AML. So when you're doing AML, what you're really trying to find are who are the individuals behind the money, controlling the entity, who you need to ID verify as part of your due diligence. Now, what Two Shakes does, any limited companies that you search for NZBN, we expand them all the way through, however many layers of ownership they have, and then aggregate the ownership, and anyone who's a director or who has 25% or more effective top-level ownership of the entity you're signing up will be selected in here as ID required. Now, we also give you a reason. This person is the main signatory. If the main signatory signing up a bookkeeper or accountant, they're clearly in control of the company. Deborah's also a director of Distinct Landscapes, and she's a 50% beneficial owner. Here, Stuart is signing, and because he's signing for himself, and he's a director of Distinct Landscapes, and he has 50% ownership. So that's all nice and simple in this example. Lots of examples are much more complicated. There are trusts involved. There are people who have less than 25%. I'm just keeping it nice and simple. We can deal with those cases later. So, and what we're we're going to do now is look at the AML CFT records. So for each of the clients that you're signing up, we have a CDD level, and we just default it to standard customer due diligence. If you notice here on distinct landscapes, because we pulled the information through from NZDN, we actually show you there's distinct landscapes, including the BIC code, so that they are actually a landscaping and property maintenance company, and it's a New Zealand company, and the ownership there. If this was like zero and they had a massive amount of different people in it, we'd have all sorts of additional information in here. Really handy for you to see that picture. So everybody's standard CDD. These factors here are the sort of things that you'd be asking. Is it a trust? Are they high risk? Is there a nominee shareholder involved? Is there a foreign politically exposed person? Is there a non-New Zealand resident? If any of these get selected, it elevates the CDD level to enhanced. When it's enhanced, you have to, as well as doing the ID verification on the people, you have to find the source of funds or proof of wealth. Okay? So imagine, for instance, it turned out that Stuart, and I'm just saying imagine, turned out to be a non-New Zealand resident. If I say yes, I'm just a little bit of help text that says, yep, we're changing this to enhanced. Enhanced due diligence means this. Please use notes and files to record the source of funds. And we can see that Stuart is then enhanced. So I'll change it back to standard because he's not. Okay, so one of the things we find when we're going through this is you need to understand the nature and purpose of your relationship. If you don't know any of this stuff, you can proceed, and add it in later and complete it. You might not know everything, but the nature and purpose, it's not simply I'm a bookkeeper, I'm an accountant. You actually have to get a picture of what the organization looks like that you're signing up, because you're going to use that for your monitoring. You're going to be saying, are they still in these premises? Do they still have this sort of type of staff or turnover? If they haven't moved to East London or to Tehran or anything in the meantime, anything that might trigger from your monitoring having to redo due diligence and continue to know your client. So you put your nature and purpose in there. For this client, you'd do a risk assessment and you'd establish what the risk level was. If it's low or medium, standard due diligence is fine. If it's high risk, then you're going to tick the high risk box here and it's going to elevate it. And you can just put notes in here, or if you've got a risk assessment sheet, you can just upload that as a file. We also have a trust tab. Trusts get quite complicated in AML, so we thought we better give you something to help on that. In the trust tab, if I add a trust, I can put in the name, the address. The legislation has 4 types of trust, and depending on the type of trust, it asks you for different information. And this is actually part of the legislation that we tease through. So if there's a trust involved, this is where you can capture that information. That's your statutory information. I'll remove that. If I ticked trust on one of these, it would poke that information straight through into trusts and I can complete it. With trusts, obviously, there is no register of trusts. There's no awesome online resource that you can go and find out who the trustees, who the beneficiaries are. You're going to have to talk to your client, establish all of that, and anybody else who's going to be in control or a beneficial owner of that trust is going to have to be added in here for ID verification. So a whole bunch of stuff on that, and continue to look through that accountant's book that DIA have put out for the accounting sector. That will give you a bit more help on that. They also have a whole raft of information specifically on trusts for you to deal with that. But for now, we're just going to say that we're happy that we've identified Deborah and Stuart as the people who are in effective control and the beneficial owners of Landscapes Limited. So, and we'll just hit proceed. Now, it's warning me, you haven't completed all your CDD. I'll do that later. So I'm just going to proceed. So now this is be familiar to anybody who's done any sign-ups in Two Shakes. We're doing exactly the same. We're saying here are the people who sign. Here, so this is Deborah is the main signatory, and Richard, who's already also signing. If I had selected on the previous page, if I had added a couple of people in just for ID verification, they would show down here as other people for ID verification only, and they're not signing the agreement, but you still need to do due diligence on them. So here we're going to say, Deborah, she's in seeing me. We're going to say that Deborah is signing here and now via SMS text. The great thing about training is no matter what email address you put in here, it will come to the logged on user, but I'll always just put my email address in. So we'll see exactly what the client gets. We'll say that Stuart is going to be signing later via email, so I can show you that. I need to put an email and a phone number in because I need somewhere to send the SMS. I'm just going to put my own phone number in. And you'll hear my phone go in a second. And then we have to, I don't have to put a phone number in for Stuart because I can put it in, and that's fine. He just won't get a text, but I will capture his phone number just now, and I can push that through to Practice Manager later, which is nice. Now, as I said, the IDV, this is the identity verification. You can select manual identity verification and do it all yourself. So do it all yourself means that you're going to check their driver's license or passport, check an address, so a document like a power bill, a bank statement, a rates notice that's got their address on it, and you're going to check that they're not a foreign politically exposed person, which is a bit of a hard thing to do, but there are people out there that provide services where you can go and check and look for people. But let's say that I'm going to do that manually today for Deborah, because she's here now, and for Stuart, I'm going to say, well, I'm not going to see Stuart. I want to electronically ID verify him rather than him to send a whole bunch of proof to me. So that's really it. We're good to go. There's a few bits here that I can change the email just now, just for this client that they get for signing. I can change the email they get after the agreement is signed, but I'm not going to worry about that. We're just going to proceed to signing. So Deborah is here. So immediately this goes into a review and sign agreement for Deborah. It's going to happen on your computer. So your client will be there next to you. So we need a way to establish or bind the electronic signature to this client. That's why we use SMS text if the person is signing here and now. When the person's signing remotely, as Stuart will be in a second, we bind the electronic signature through the email that we send to him, and he clicks on a unique link back into Two Shakes. That binds the electronic signature to a device in his unique control. Okay? Somebody's coming on. That's all good. So here's what Deborah would see on your computer. As the main signatory, she's going to put in the IR number for Landscapes Limited. Now that we check we have an algorithm that checks if it's a valid IR number. IR don't actually provide an API where we can check if that's the Landscapes IR number, but we do exactly the same as accounting packages like Xero. We check to see whether or not it's a valid IR number. And I'm just using a few dummy ones just now. For Deborah, I'll put in her IR number, so that's all good. We can see Stuart's there, but he'll put in his own when he signs. So this is the parties that are signing up, along with, with ATA's new books, the services and fees that you've agreed with your client. Here's the authorities that we captured on that authorities page, and if your client wants to, they can preview an unsigned version of the forms that they're signing. They can click to see your terms and conditions just to make sure that they're happy with them still. And then for somebody who's signing here and now, they can put in this SMS text that's just come through. So I'll just put that in. And it is 747184. Okay, that's what your client would have on their phone, and they put that into your computer that shows that they're here, and that creates their electronic signature. Now, they accept, they tick this box that Deborah is accepting on behalf of herself because she's signing up as a client, and on behalf of Distinct Landscapes that she agrees to this agreement and the authorities. She also has to tick a box that says that she agrees to Two Shakes terms of use. That's just part of using this system. We couldn't not have that based on our lawyers. Now, Deborah can then type in her signature, and that's what will appear next to that it's been signed electronically. The reason for that is you could legitimately have something that just had a bit of text saying this was electronically signed. One, we don't really think that looks great. Two, quite often people will want to see what the real representation of the signature looked like a bank or an insurance company. They can upload a signature, or the alternate is to sign on screen. You do this with a mouse, or I've got a touch screen here. I'll just say test Deborah. So that's all we need to do there. And I would definitely recommend, if you're using it's all fine for the government agencies, but if you're using those letters of authority that might go to a bank or an insurance company, I would ask your client to sign this way, because they'll likely have a specimen signature on file, and they'll look at it, and if you've just typed the signature, then they'll be asking what's going on. You might even come back to Two Shakes and we can explain. So, but for any government authorities, typing the signature is fine. So then Deborah just signs the agreement, and you can come through to this agreement management page. Now, we can't say to Deborah, that's all good, you're done. We've got one last bit to do, because we're ID verifying Deborah manually. So Deborah is now signed, we can see that, but the ID verification is manual. So what we would now do is do some notes and files, add a note. I might take a photocopy of Deborah's passport or driver's license. I might just cite it and write in here at a minimum the driver's license number and the version number. So we can do all of that in here. I can do any other due diligence. I can scan her address verification and make a note that I've somehow checked that she's not a foreign politically exposed person. Once I've done all of that, I can come on here and say my ID verification is done. So I've done all of my due diligence checks on Deborah, and I'm happy that according to my program, it's all up to you, according to my program, Deborah is now, I've now done my due diligence on Deborah, and that's manually completed. So hopefully that makes sense to you. Now we need to have a look at Stuart. So Stuart, we can see that he's pending signing and he's pending ID verification. And if I have a quick look at Stuart, I can see that he's signing later via email, and he's going to be being ID verified electronically. So let's go and see what Stuart sees. Yeah. So this is the email that Stuart gets that says, "Hi Stuart, and you can edit this email as I showed you in your profile. Please click on this link, go into Two Shakes and sign the agreement. We also ask about the ID verification, so please have your driver's license or passport ready." So when I click on this, Stuart sees exactly the same as what Deborah sees, only he's now putting in his IR number. All of the same things. He can see his IR authority. He can preview his ACC authority. You can see that Deborah's already signed. Now there's an extra bit in here because we're doing ID verification electronically. This was the same box that would have appeared for Deborah had you decided to electronically ID verify Deborah while you were standing next to her. So we get the same box, and we've got Stuart Richard Gill. I'm just going to select a date of birth from. We'll say that it's there. I hope he's not offended. We'll put in an address in Wellington. And of course, okay, now that's his part of what happens here. We send all of this information off to Centrix, a third-party ID verification provider. They have an AML product called Smart ID. They will check the name, the address, the passport or driver's license, the BIA and NZTA. They will check that he's not a politically exposed person or on any sanctions list. They have agreements with all of the banks, insurance companies, utility companies to check the addresses. So they can do the whole ID verification, including the PEP check, electronically. So we'll just put in a driver's license number and a version number. If it had been enhanced due diligence, not only would this say, if you've been asked to provide any documents, you can upload them here. It would also say, because it's enhanced, if you have proof of wealth or source of funds, you please upload that just now. So, much as Deborah did, Stuart is agreeing to the agreement. He's signing on behalf of himself. He's agreeing to Two Shakes terms and conditions. But here, there's an extra block of text whenever ID verification is being used that consents to the electronic ID verification. So, in this case, I'm just going to do test Stuart so you can see what it looks like with that. But that's him done. So he's put in his IR number, he's put in his information, and we're just going to sign the agreement. He gets some little congratulations, so that's nice. And he can close his browser. So he's done. That's what all your client has to do. When we come back to Two Shakes, what we can then see for Stuart, so what we can see for Stuart is that he is signed, but the electronic ID is processing. So that just takes a minute or so in order for that to be processed. In training, it's all, it's just completely training data. There's no real data in here. So that's now been done. So we can now see that Deborah has signed and she was manually ID verified. Stuart has signed and that has been checked. If I go back to Stuart now, I can see the electronic ID verification has been done, and I can see a report that shows traceability of the ID verification through us back to Centrix, back to DIA or NZTA if it's driver's license, what was checked, and the fact that he's not a politically exposed person. So that's all done. Yeah? So because it's signed, we're now signed, but it's AML pending. And this is where we're saying you still need an AML officer, somebody that you might have created as a user and you've ticked that box, to come in here, check that all of the due diligence has been done, then you're happy to provide AML services. So at the bottom of this page, we have this AML Customer Due Diligence. It's all of the stuff that you saw earlier. It's exactly the same stuff. You can complete your nature and purpose. You can make sure that all your risk assessment's been done. You finish off anything on trusts. And then at that point, you could hit complete CDD. Now, this complete CDD is only going to be visible to somebody who's an AML officer. If while you're doing this, you flush out that actually there is another person in the mix who we need to ID verify, who we didn't pick up when we were talking to the client because we didn't want to give them the third degree, you can come up here and add that person in. They will get an email, they will get ID verified, and you can make sure your due diligence is complete. Once it is complete, we just come in here.
Thank you.
Sorry? Oh, it's okay. I'll just keep going. I thought somebody was asking a question. So once you come in here, this says, once you're happy that your customer due diligence is complete according to your program, so that the liability is on you, you've got to make sure that you're happy that everything's been done, you can hit proceed. And at that point, that completes the due diligence for your client, so which is CDD completed. I'm just focusing on the AML side just now, and then I'll go back to what the customer sees. If you get audited, when you get audited, which would be every 2 years by somebody you organise to come in and audit you, or randomly by DIA, they're likely to say, can we randomly see your due diligence on these 3 or 4 or 5 customers? When they do that, for each of the customers they ask, you can say, well, Two Shakes has an AML report, and all of my due diligence, which shows my client and agreement details, my assessment notes, my nature and purpose, risk assessment, all of the entity information and the ID verifications I did, as well as my notes and files, are all here. So you just click that button and show the auditor all of the work that you've done to CDD your client. That's why making those notes and files really, really useful to capture that narrative of the due diligence, any decisions you've made, I'm not sure about this, but I think it's okay because of that. Make all of those notes, they'll appear in here so that the auditor can see you thinking along the lines. So that's just a single click of the button for the AML report for the client. Once a year, I think it's the 31st of August, starting next year, you need to do a report to DIA. It's an AML report, or an annual AML report. It's 20 pages. It's not easy. So I would encourage you to go and have a look at that report as soon as you can, so that you know what you're in for, and you can start thinking about, how do I capture this information? Anything that Two Shakes captures, a lot, which is all around your CDD, the onboarding side of it. We give you the statistics for the current year. How many people were electronically ID verified, how many you did manually, how many were unsuccessful electronic, any of these New Zealand residents, non-New Zealand residents, New Zealand entities, any trusts that have been signed up, any PIP flags that were flagged. All of that information we are tracking as you're using Two Shakes for the current DIA reporting year. So that's there for when you need it. So and at any point, if you need to come in and have a look in your client details, you can see all of that information in the agreement that you've got with your client. So it's all in there. These forms are there just in case you need to refer to them. IRD, the IRD 597, the ACC 1766, and the Companies Office Authority all get sent to those agencies automatically. You don't have to do anything. So let's just go back to our email and have a little look at what your clients got. So both Deborah and Stuart receive emails that say, "Dear Deborah," and this is that email that you can edit. "Thanks for signing up with Artist New Books. Please find attached a copy of your agreement." And when I open that agreement, it's a sample in training, obviously, but in that agreement, I can see my logo, I can see the parties, the services that we've agreed, all of the fees, the authorities are captured. That test Deborah that I did, the test Stuart that I did, it's been ID verification reference, electronic signature reference, and that all on the paid plans all gets hashed. That agreement gets then put on the Ethereum blockchain. So there's a proof point that that agreement exists at this point in time, and it hasn't been altered since. So both Deborah and Stuart and anybody else who signed the agreement gets that. Anybody who's been ID verified alone doesn't get it. That wouldn't be appropriate. Just the people who are signing gets this. You get an email that says, "Great news," so that if you're not in Two Shakes, you get an email that says, "Great news, Stuart has now signed," which is great. So I can then go in and complete any due diligence. At the same time, I can do other things. I can download the PDF. I can renew the agreement next year or in 2 years' time. I can hit renew agreement. It kicks off the same thing, but I don't have to search for everybody. I've got all my entities there, and I can redo, for instance, my customer due diligence. I can get them onto new terms and conditions. I can update the services and fees that I'm providing. So that's really useful. One other thing, when we did Practice Manager, when I showed you that authority, if you're using Practice Manager or Workflow Max, you'll see Upload to Practice Manager. And if I just click that button, it takes a couple of seconds, and then we are uploading, we're creating each of those clients and the contacts under them, as well as pushing up the services agreement to Practice Manager. So you don't have to type anything else in. So if I go into, I've got Workflow Max as a demonstration. I archived all my clients before this webinar. So if I just refresh that now, you'll see the people that we've just signed up. Deborah, Distinct Landscapes, and Stuart are all in there. If I have a look under Distinct Landscapes, I can see Deborah and Stuart are the contacts. I've got my email address and phone number because that's what I put into Two Shakes. And over on the Documents tab, I can see the services agreement here, and it's exactly the same PDF document that got sent to your client. So that's the agreement for services you have with them. So that's basically what Two Shakes looks like. When you're managing your agreements, you just go to this Agreements tab. Everybody that you've signed up and the status of them is all in here. So those Distinct, Deborah and Stuart, has been signed, and we can go into that anytime. There are other people that we have signed up and they're AML pending. There's some that are draft still. And there are some that, if they've got a flag against them, it says, "Oh, I need to do something on here." It may be that there's an expired email link. There might be something that I manually have to do. So I can just be alerted and go in there and manually look at it. So that's basically how Two Shakes looks and how it works for AML. It's a simple situation, a company and two directors, but hopefully it gives you an idea of how you would use it. Is there any questions that anybody has? And I can just quickly go through and show you what it would look like in Two Shakes, or I'll unshare the screen and you can ask me some questions.
I have a question, Mike.
Yep.
You, for the AML, you talked about the identity verification and that you need address, passport, or driver's license. And then there was a third thing that to ensure they are not a foreign something.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate a little bit on this?
Of course. It's a foreign politically exposed person. So the legislation, people can be politically exposed persons, not just if they're a politician, but there are some other situations. They might be acting for crown bodies, and there's a few other bits and pieces that people end up on these lists, and they are internationally managed lists of politically exposed persons. And the idea, basically, the legislation, and you should look into this, says if somebody happens to be on the PEP watch list, so they are a foreign politically exposed person, like Donald Trump would be the perfect example, right? If it was Donald Trump that you were signing up, then there are flags that say, oh, hold on a minute, if in this situation, you shouldn't take them on as a client unless certain things have happened. And it basically gets escalated to the senior management or the directors of your company to make a decision on whether or not to take on that client. There's a whole raft of the legislation is around that. Internationally, the AML legislation tends to just focus on all politically exposed persons. But when the legislation was enacted in New Zealand, the New Zealand government excluded New Zealand's politically exposed persons. So that's why in New Zealand, the check for a PEP is whether or not it's a foreign politically exposed person. Mm-hmm. But definitely have a look into some of we've got a lot of guidance and stuff on our links to DIA guidance on our website, or you can just go straight to the DIA AML information and mm-hmm. look for PEPs, look for politically exposed persons. There's a whole bunch of good stuff. Atta, when she was talking at the bookkeepers conference, she mentioned those documents, the accountants sector guide. That's a really useful thing to go through, and that's got a lot of glossary of terms, because there's a lot of new terms that you'll have to get used to on this. Mm-hmm. And that's got a nice glossary in it, so definitely get a copy of that, either electronically or in paper form.
Thank you.
If I just go to the Two Shakes website, if you click on this free training environment, you will get, you can just be asked for your name and your email address. You'll get a login, an email to create your login. And once you've got that login, when you're in training, you've always got this peachy background, the peachy pink background. If you're not in the peachy pink background, if it's white, it's live, and everything you do is happening for real. So I would use training as much as you can to get used to it, see how it all works, and then do it for real in the live environment.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
Mike?
Yep.
Can you hear me? It's Craig.
Hey, Craig. Yeah, I can hear you, Craig.
Just with the IDV side of things, there's two options, either a manual or an electronic.
Yeah.
Are we, and I know the electronic is going to cost us, but is that would be a safer version for us, or a safer option for us to use?
Oh, I wouldn't like to say safer. It's got a whole bunch of connotations. If you do your due diligence, I would use it. Put it that way. If you do your due diligence properly and you do it manually, then it's fine. So if you do proper documentary due diligence and you take a copy or make a note of their passport or driver's license, if you take a photocopy of something that you believe is their address, and and this is the kind of hard bit as well, if you work out how to access those PEP watch lists. I believe Thomson Reuters have a subscription service for that sort of thing, but again, you're paying and you're doing it yourself. If you do the PEP checks, if you do all of that due diligence and then click the button that says, yeah, I've manually IDV'd, I've done all my due diligence, It doesn't cost you anything, but it's probably taken you a lot longer than $5 worth of your time.
Yeah.
You know, so and you're not really 100% sure that you've got it right. So it's perfectly legitimate to do it and not spend the $5. Personally, for me, $5 of my time, and knowing that I wasn't just citing a driver's license or a passport, but the details were being checked by NZTA or by DIA, so it's not a forgery, you know. Knowing
I think that's where I'm coming from, that these things are being done in the background for us by the software.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And you do get that traceability. When we send it to Centrix and Centrix pass the request on to the government agency to check the driver's license or passport, that agency records a reference number for that passport or driver's license was checked at that time. And that reference number gets passed to Centrix, and Centrix then pass their reference number for that to us, and we pass our reference number for that to you. So you've got a traceability path back to the ID verification that was done.
Yeah.
And you don't get that if somebody just gives you a driver's license that they might have had made off some website, you know?
Yeah, no, great.
Yeah, and you know, so there's that side of it, absolutely. You know, and then there's the doing it for $5, which is probably going to take you a lot longer. Just so you're aware, if some people, for whatever reason, they might have a driver's license, so they can check everything but say the address, and they put their address in, but it doesn't get verified, and we say not verified electronically. When that happens, if you look at the report, you'll see what it didn't get verified on, and it will normally be on the address. And then it reverts to manual, but you just have to get proof of address from the person. Yeah, so we will say we can do the ID verification, everything's done, but you can see where there will be a couple of red X's on address, and you get the address, you upload something that shows their address, and then you just finish it by clicking the manual CDD. Yeah?
Okay, great, thank you.
Remember, if it's enhanced, you are going to have to, there's no way that, you know, Centrix or us can get proof of funds or source of wealth. So if it's enhanced, you're going to have to ask them for that information as well, and make sure you get that and add it in your notes and files. Is there any other questions? No, something I'll just quickly show you then, just before we finish up. If I go to my agreements, I was at the Bookkeepers Conference, we were just next to Xero. So very nicely, I was demonstrating it for Xero by signing up Xero, just for one of the guys on the Xero stand. Now, Xero obviously is a very complex situation. If I go to my AML due diligence for Xero, if I look at Xero, this is what it looks like. So it's pretty complicated. I've seen worse, but you know, it's complicated enough. And a lot of these things are shareholdings that are owned by multiple people together, which means when we say, this is a possible trust, there's also a few things in here that are foreign companies that are owning them. When that happens, there'll be an extra block in the AML page, and it will just show shareholdings that you need to resolve manually. And it will say, here's 15.1%. This is, you know, owned by a foreign company. This is a possible trust. This is a foreign company, a foreign company, a foreign company. And we give you that information for you to dig into, find out if it is a trust, add it as a trust, add some more people in for due diligence. You get, you know, we show you, we can't resolve all of that automatically if it's a trust or if it's a foreign company, but we show you that information and say, look, dig into this. Find out if anybody else is in the mix for CDD, add them in, and do the ID verification on them. So that's just something else to be aware of. Right, I was just going to stop the share and come back to me. So that's kind of where we're at. I hope that's been useful for anybody who's using it or thinking of using it.
Thank you. Can I ask one more question, please?
Go for it,
it's at the very beginning when you set things up and you set up the IRD side of things. You said there's two factors or two things. One is if you're a tax agent.
Yeah.
And can you explain the other one? again, please?
Oh, so if you're not a tax agent, if you're a tax agent, you have the ability to go into My IR and link to your client in My IR.
Okay.
And then you can do everything electronically for them. But if you're a tax agent, you need to capture something signed by your client giving you the authority to do that link.
Yeah.
If you're not a tax agent, but you still want to be able to contact IR and ask them questions about your clients, manage your clients' funds, do what you need to do with IR, manage your clients' accounts, there's a form called a nominated party form. It's the IR 597. So I'll just quickly share the screen again, and I'll go back to where we were. The IR 597 nominated party form is a form that your client signs to give you authority to contact IR on their behalf.
Mm-hmm.
So in this case, I believe we did do the IR 597. So yeah, we did. So here's the IR 597 forms for Stuart, for Deborah, and for Distinct Landscapes that we just did. We send this automatically. If I'll just open that so you can see what it looks like. And it's here just for your records. So this is a form, and you download it off IR's website that says Distinct Landscapes. I'm muting you. Distinct Landscapes with this IR number, this address. The director is Deborah, who's doing the nomination. She's the main signatory that we talked about. She's giving Atta's Books, which was the company that you'll use to sign up, Atta's Books of this address, authority to contact IR and do any of this stuff here. You know, work on accounts, all of these different IR accounts, and it's got a start date and an end date. And if you leave the end date blank, it's just forever unless it gets revoked. That then, when Deborah, if you remember, Deborah signed, this goes to IR. It says it's been signed on this date, electronically signed on 2 shakes with this reference number. IR then process that form and send you an email saying, thanks for that, you now have authority to act for Distinct Landscapes, Deborah and Stuart. Yeah, and that gives you authority to call them up. We, again, until IR build it, we can't make the My IR link. They have said it's part of business transformation. Business transformation, bits of it are sometimes in the mix and sometimes not, and they get pushed out a bit. We are just encouraging IR and encouraging our clients to ask IR to build that interface so that we can create that link for you in My IR as well, whether you're a tax agent or not. Well, look, that's awesome. I'm just going to say thank you very much for coming in, everybody. Obviously, you know where our website is. There's tons of great information on there. Do sign up for that training account. Have a play. Get used to it. And then make sure when you're doing it for real, you've got your free 10. So you can do 10 free agreements. It doesn't cost you anything. And then you can either go on to the paid monthly or pay-as-you-go plans. Any questions at all, give me a call. One last thing I would say, and it was just something you mentioned, Craig, if you're on free, even if you're doing a free agreement, if you select to do electronic ID verification, we will ask you to enter a credit card so that we only take credit cards from now on. We will ask you to enter a credit card and we will charge you that $5 per person because we get charged by Centrix when we send things off to them. So even when you're doing the 10 free agreements, if you need to do an IDV electronically, it's always $5. Okay? Sweet. Well, look, thanks a lot, everyone. If there aren't any other questions, I'm just going to kind of hang up and end the meeting, and feel free to look at our website and give us a call or drop us an email if there's anything that you need.
Thanks,
Okay.
Mike.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye for now. Sandra, all good?
Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for coming in.
Cool. Bless you. Thank you.
No
Have
problem.
a great day.
Yeah, you too. Take care.
Bye.
Bye. Okay, guys. Thank you for coming. I'll just end the meeting. Cheers then. Bye-bye.